Welcome to Phonetics. In this slideshow, we're going to have a look at what phonetics, what that means, and why we're going to study that for the next 8 weeks. The worst aviation catastrophe in the history of the world happened in 1977. It was in Tenerife in the Canary Islands, and 2 Boeing 747s collided, and over 500 people were killed. Part of the reason for this terrible catastrophe, part of it was miscommunication from oral communication, people using language, in this case it was English, to communicate ideas, and part of that was a misunderstanding, and it was one of the reasons for this terrible crash. So communication can have a powerful effect. We can see that it can be life or death for people. It's something that we as humans use all the time. It seems so natural to us. But in this class, what we're going to do is really break it apart into its pieces and really analyze what's going on when we communicate using oral language. We live in a world where oral communication is just one of the many ways that people communicate. We have writing systems. People are emailing, texting each other all the time. If you go back and look at the history of humanity, that wasn't the case. For most of the time that humans have been on this earth, communication has always been oral. And really, it's just in the last couple hundred years that so much more of it takes place in other forms. But in the end, we still communicate orally by speaking. And one of the reasons we do this is because it's incredibly efficient. It's actually, in some ways, more effective because you can communicate your ideas so quickly, and the way that you communicate will also affect the message. So we're going to be looking at that in class. Oral language goes to the very heart of how humans communicate and how speech-language pathologists, what they work with. It's all about the oral communication. So what is phonetics? Well, phonetics is the science of speech sounds. So we're not really looking at just sounds in general, which would be acoustics, but we're really looking at the speech sounds. So who studies phonetics? When I ask my classes, usually they come up with a variety of ideas, and if you kind of think about it, you can see that it is a huge group of people from all different walks of life. But these are some of the typical people who study phonetics. Speech-language pathologists, it's really integral in that job. Actors use it sometimes because they want to study dialects or how to change the way that they produce speech. Language teachers can be very important to help them understand how they can teach sounds in another language. And language learners, it can be incredibly effective if you understand phonetics. It can help you when you're acquiring a second language. Software developers, because we see more and more that people are interested in figuring out how to take human speech and convert it into something digital for other communicative purposes. Opera singers, because they often sing in foreign languages. Cognitive scientists, because they want to understand how language works and how speech works. So there are many, many more. Many people use phonetics. But at the top of the list, again, we have speech-language pathologists because it's an incredibly important part of what they do. So why do you need phonetics? That's another question, right? Well, everybody's got their personal reasons for this, but the number one reason, I think, for a lot of people is ASHA, because ASHA is our National Association of Speech-Language Pathologists and Audiologists, and ASHA requires this. So it's a required course if you are going to major or go to graduate school and study to become a speech-language pathologist. It's required by ASHA. And most people who take this course are taking the course because they want to go to graduate school, and to be in graduate school, you're going to have to be in a clinic. You're going to have to work with clients. And to do well in clinic and with clients, you're going to need to understand phonetics. You also have to learn how to analyze disordered speech. That's a big thing, a big part of what speech-language pathologists do. And to understand the differences in speech. So this will give you great insights into how people from other languages communicate in English and how they communicate in their own language, and about how sounds are made in general. Also, you're going to learn something that can help you in many ways in life and with your understanding of language, which is you're going to have the ability to transcribe sounds as they're produced. And a lot of people do it because they need to work in a lab, or they might work in a lab. An important topic for me would be appreciating all of the diversity of the world's languages. I'm a language lover, and for me, this is one of the big things that you get out of this course. There are 3 branches of phonetics, and we'll kind of walk through this twice. First, we'll take a look at just the basic name of what they're called. We have articulatory phonetics, we have auditory phonetics, and then finally we have acoustic phonetics. And so again, those are the 3 A's you can kind of remember. And then to go through one more time, articulatory deals with production, how speech sounds are made. Auditory deals with perception, so somebody has to hear those sounds and perceive them. And then acoustic is the physics of it, so that's the real science of how sounds are created. The other important branches, there are many different branches of phonetics, but 2 that are going to come up quite a bit in this class are clinical phonetics and applied phonetics. Now, clinical phonetics deals with disordered populations, people who need help in communicating, and that's why phonetics comes into play to help them. It might be young kids, it might be someone who's had a stroke, there are a variety of reasons. And then applied phonetics can also is in some ways a little bit broader because it just deals with solving problems through phonetics, and it may be people who don't have a disorder, but they may have a difference in the way they communicate, for example, accents or dialects. So we've talked about what this course will cover in general, but just a quick overview at some of the details. We will look at speech sounds and transcription. How are we going to write down speech sounds? We're going to have a look at the consonants and vowels of English. The focus of this class will be on English, but we will cover other languages. Suprasegmentals are the patterns of spoken language, so we'll look into that. Acquisition and delay. How do kids learn language? What happens if they don't learn it on time? And then we will look at the consonants and vowels of the world to give you more of an understanding about the diversity of the world's languages. And then finally, we'll have a look at accents and dialects.